Hello, welcome to the NPC College Panhellenics and Kappa Basics Every PDC Needs to Know webinar. My name is Emily Perrin-Britt, and I will be your technical producer and moderator this evening. This webinar will be presented by Kristen Fouts, one of our NPC alternate delegates. Before we start the presentation, let's take a moment to ensure that everyone is ready and familiar with the webinar control panel. On the right side of your screen, you will see the attendee control panel, and on the left is the webinar viewer window. The viewer window will display the presenter screen when the webinar begins. The control panel can be minimized or expanded by clicking on the horizontal double arrow button in the upper left corner. It's usually orange. Minimizing the panel allows a better view of the presentation. Take a moment to practice. There are a few features of the control panel that the attendees should know. First, be familiar with the Raise Your Hand button. This button is located along the left side of the control panel. It allows you to virtually raise your hand if you have a question or if you want to respond to a question being asked by the presenter. Click this button to raise your hand now. Great. Clicking again will lower your hand. Another important feature of the control panel is the questions pane. To submit a question, type it into the question box. These may be questions related to the presentation or technical questions related to the GoToWebinar system. You may also be asked by the presenter to type your ideas or responses here as a part of an exercise during the webinar. Please send a quick note in your questions pane now, telling us where you are calling from this evening. Great, we've got some people from Chicago, Ohio, Lexington, Massachusetts. I'm in Lexington, Kentucky. This is wonderful. Great, thanks guys. So questions may be submitted at any time. These will be monitored and we will try to respond quickly if we see something that shouldn't wait until the question and answer period, such as making a clarification or a major technical issue. During the webinar, you may be asked to respond to a polling question or a survey. Please take time to participate as your input and ideas are valuable to the group. Be sure to stay attentive and to interact as much as possible during this webinar. The quality of your experience depends on your attention and participation. Try to avoid the distractions of responding to email, checking Facebook, instant messaging, or working on other tasks at your computer. If you need to step away for a moment, do not close the GoToWebinar window, as you will be required to log in again if you wish to rejoin the session. If you experience problems with the audio, one possible solution is to use the conference call number and listen to the presentation using your phone. Click the Use Telephone option in the audio pane of your control panel to view the conference call number. The webinar is being recorded and an online version will be available to view on the Kappa website by the end of the week. Are there any questions? Okay, I'd now like to hand the virtual microphone over to Kristen.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Emily. On behalf of Kappa's NPC delegate, Patty Gazelle, I want to welcome you all to this webinar tonight. As Emily mentioned, my name is Kristen Fouts. I currently serve the fraternity as our third alternate NPC delegate. In that role, I have the opportunity to work with quite a number of Kappa chapters as an NPC resource, and I also work with 6 colleges and universities in southern and central Michigan as an NPC area advisor. So very excited to have the opportunity to be able to share some background and some information about NPC, the College Panhellenic structure and purpose, and the linkage with Kappa, and how all of you fit into that structure. We have a lot of content to get through tonight, so I apologize in advance if I might talk a little bit quickly, but hopefully we touch on some of the areas that you indicated you have questions about regarding College Panhellenic and NPC. Throughout the program, as Emily mentioned, if you have questions, please feel free to type them into the question pane, or you can also feel free to reach out to Patty. Her email address will be at the end of this the webinar. And she will also be at ACS in June. So if you are attending that in Columbus, you can feel free to ask her some of those questions in person. Now, Emily, as a side note, I do notice that I can't see questions. So if they type anything in, feel free to jump in and ask.
You got it.
Fantastic. Well, let's dive in with our first poll. Here we go. So, first question, I just want to know, how NPC smart are you? What's your level of familiarity or understanding when it comes to NPC? So, are you an expert? Could you stand a refresher? Hopefully this webinar will do that. Or do you desperately need this webinar? Don't even have sort of the bare basics about NPC. Emily should pop that poll up for you and go ahead and take a second to answer.
We've almost got everybody voted. Just a few more. Okay, well, it looks like most of the people have indicated that they could use a refresher, but next closest is I desperately need this webinar. So it sounds like we
Okay.
are in the right place.
Good. Well, we are on track then to hopefully help all of you learn a little bit more or a lot more about NPC. So, continuing on, there we go. Whoops, sorry. Let's start with what is NPC. NPC stands for the National Panhellenic Conference, not to be confused with the National Panhellenic Council, which is the Divine Nine or historically African American fraternities and sororities. The vision statement and mission statement you see here on your screen were developed at the 2011 June 2011 Board of Directors meeting. The vision for NPC is advancing the sorority experience together. The mission statement is the National Panhellenic Conference is the premier advocacy and support organization for the advancement of the sorority experience. NPC continuously promotes the fraternity and sorority experience to the public, including high school women, collegiate potential members, fraternity sorority community, and all of our existing members and stakeholders, including collegians and alumni. Now, fraternities exist because of the social experiences, because of our values-based background, because of the service we do, the leadership opportunities we provide to young women, and of course the need to belong, to be able to provide a home for college women during their time in college. In terms of advocacy, again, we market the fraternity sorority experience to high school students as well as college students and a variety of stakeholders in between. A little bit of background on NPC. Our first gathering was in 1891, and actually at that point we were called the Inter-Sorority Conference, or ISC. Kappa actually spearheaded this. The first meeting was presided over by Lucy Evelyn White, who is a member of Kappa Kappa Gamma. We invited our sisters in Alpha Phi, Delta Gamma, Tri Delta, Gamma Phi Beta, Kappa Alpha Theta, and Pi Phi to that meeting. As you can see, rushing was the key topic of the day, and really just a desire to get to know one another. The Inter-Sorority Conference was officially founded in 1902, and just a few years later we determined the need to honor the sovereignty of individual groups as well as to protect the equality of every member group. So that's when the one fraternity, one vote rule came into play, where each organization was given one vote in the business of the conference. In 1915, we adopted our Panhellenic Creed, which we still recite today at the beginning of every Panhellenic meeting. Some of you may be familiar with it. If you're not, I won't take the time to read it now, but you can find it on the NPC website or in the Manual of Information. And at that point, our conference doubled in size from 7 to 18 members, so we had tremendous growth at that point. Continuing history, we jump forward into the 70s. This is when NPC began the all-important lobbying effort for our single-sex status. Thanks to Title IX, we had to fight to remain single-sex organizations, and that fight continues today. We have to ensure that our organizations are women-only so that we can maintain that status that, again, we fought so hard for in the 70s. In 1984, NPC's central office opened. Today, that office is located in Indianapolis. If you're familiar with Indianapolis, we're on the north side on 86th Street. In 1996, the first of our significant educational programs was piloted. That's Something of Value, and I'll talk about Something of Value in more detail in a few minutes. The NPC standards were created in 2003 in response to a document called the Call for Values Congruence. If you're familiar with that document, a number of college presidents came together and requested that governing bodies and associations affiliated with fraternities and sororities create guiding standards and guiding policies. Now, obviously, we already had some policies in place, but this really sort of ushered in a new era of much stronger standards with greater structure. Those were revised in 2014. And in 2011, we joined forces with the NIC, the North American Interfraternity Conference, and the Fraternity Sorority Political Action Committee to form the Fraternal Government Relations Coalition, otherwise known as FGRC, or just the Coalition. And I will talk more about the Coalition in just a few minutes. So that's just a quick sort of rundown about NPC history. Now, NPC operates as a conference, not a congress. Other than the unanimous agreements that all of our member groups have agreed upon and voted to observe and uphold, and I'll talk about those unanimous agreements a little bit later on, the conference really confines itself to establishing policies and best practices and encouraging the adoption and the use of those policies and best practices, and acts as a court of final appeal whenever a college Panhellenic council incurs some sort of difficulty in their judicial process. So NPC itself does not enforce policy, but however relies on the college Panhellenics to do that. So again, the NPC operates or steps in the place of an appeal for some of those college Panhellenic judicial processes. Now, who is NPC? We've talked a little bit about the structure, so who actually makes up NPC? There are 26 member organizations. There's a link there you can access to see the full list if you're not familiar with the list of 24. In terms of governance or leadership, I should say, we are governed by a board of directors. You can see there the individuals that form that board of directors. The executive committee is comprised of a chairman. Currently, that chairman is Jean Morosic, who's a member of Chi Omega, a vice chairman, the budget and finance committee chairman, the advocacy chairman, and the Panhellenics chairman. Patty Gazelle currently serves as the college Panhellenics chairman. The chairman and the vice chairman operate by rotation. So again, right now, Chi Omega is in the chairman role, so it will be several years before a Kappa gets back into that seat. Other individuals who make up NPC. Every organization, every Panhellenic organization has delegates and alternate delegates. Delegates serve, and again, our delegate is Patty Gazelle. Our delegates serve as the primary voice for the organization in all Panhellenic matters. The alternate delegates serve as a support system for the delegate, and in the case where she might not be physically able to vote, we step in and take on that role. We guide our undergraduate delegates, those individuals that serve as delegates to the college Panhellenic councils on their respective campuses. We guide them through decisions, through votes, through certain issues or opportunities that their Panhellenic might be discussing. And then at the international level, we delegates communicate with delegates of other organizations to discuss campus and Panhellenic issues and opportunities. So we'll talk through some of those issues, but of course, off the top of your head, you could think of extension or recruitment-related issues, housing, and so on. So we have those conversations in order for our undergraduate delegates to make informed decisions and votes. In terms of the office, again, we're located on 86th Street here in Indianapolis, which is where I live. Nikki Manili serves as the executive director for the NPC. There are 5 other full-time staff, and I believe at least 1 or 2 part-time staff, as well as an undergraduate intern that support the work of the National Panhellenic Conference. When the conference meets, when we get together as a body or as sort of segments of the body, every fall, actually in October, we have an annual meeting. The annual meeting is comprised of the delegation, so the delegates and alternate delegates of each of our 26 member organizations, as well as presidents of the organizations and executive directors. We get together as with any annual meeting for any corporation or organization to discuss business for the upcoming year, both new and old business legislation that needs to be voted and discussed and so on. The delegates also come together in a spring board meeting that is only the primary delegate. And there are also retreats for the executive council throughout the year, as well as conference calls. So those conference calls occur bi-monthly and as needed to discuss any pressing or emergency issues. So you can see that the delegates, the conference as a whole, meet and communicate very frequently. Second poll question, how familiar are you with the NPC website? We're going to start diving into some services and resources offered by NPC. So A, didn't even know NPC had a website. B, I visited a few times. Or C, I often use the resources that are available for collegians and advisors. Go ahead and take a minute and share your response.
All right. It looks like everybody's in, and there's where we are. So kind of evenly split.
Among the three?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Well, first and foremost, we do have a website. It is npcwomen.org. That's npcwomen.org. I strongly encourage you to check out the website. If you have visited a few times, you have seen we do have a variety of resources that are sort of in front of the wall, so to speak, that anyone can access. We also have resources that are behind the wall that are accessible only to officers for the College Panhellenics, for international volunteers such as myself, presidents and delegates and executive directors, but there is quite a wealth of information that even you can use in your work with Kappa chapters in your daily communication with them. So we will talk about some of those services coming up here. All right, so talking through some of these services and resources that are offered by NPC. First and foremost are volunteers. I've talked a little bit about what delegates do, but College Panhellenics, outside of its executive committee and outside of its office staff, the work, just like within Kappa, is done mostly by volunteers. Volunteers in Panhellenic are area advisors and area advisor coordinators. So just as I mentioned when I introduced myself, I work with 6 campuses in southern and central Michigan. So that is my area as an area advisor. So there are quite a number of area advisors that work with colleges around the country. And then each of us has an area advisor coordinator who oversees several different areas. So again, just like within Panhellenic, there are sort of individual volunteers that have a particular area, and then there are sort of volunteer supervisors that oversee those individuals. So we work with both College Panhellenic as well as alumni Panhellenic groups in helping them fulfill their duties, their responsibilities, and to carry out the work of their association. We have also on the website what's called the CPH dashboard, or the College Panhellenic dashboard. This is a page or a site specifically devoted to a College Panhellenic, and it's a place where they can access minutes and post minutes from their meetings. They can also post and download RFM data and statistics year by year. They can also both post their own Panhellenic documents, their guiding documents, as well as access templates and models for some of their guiding documents in case they're wanting to make some revisions. So that's basically a go-to page for them to be able to post information about their own group and to download important resources so that they can carry out their work. It is also accessible by area advisors and the area advisor coordinators so that we can all stay on the same page about their reports and whatnot. The release figure method, which some of you might be familiar with, we'll talk about that in just a few minutes in more detail. But the release figure data is also hosted on our website for each campus. RFM specialists provide training to dues-paying members. So those college Panhellenics that pay dues are eligible to receive services by an RFM specialist during their primary recruitment period. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about what the release figure method is in a few minutes. NPC also provides support and guidance during extension processes for dues-paying members. We'll talk again in a few minutes about what extension is and what that process looks like. But for campuses that are seeking additional member organizations, we do provide, or NPC does provide, quite a bit of support and guidance through that process. One of the very important roles that NPC serves, or services that they provide, is the university document review process. I actually serve on the document review committee. We review a variety of documents submitted to us or gathered by us from colleges and universities around the country. We review documents that assess fraternities and sororities in different ways, including awards processes, standards documents, expectations documents, relationship agreements, and so on. And we provide recommendations and feedback about those documents to make sure that they are in alignment with NPC unanimous agreements, policies, best practices, and so on. The document review committee was started in 2004, and every year we review dozens of documents to make sure that our college and university partners are staying in alignment with our preferred policies. It is incredibly important, and you can see there in bold with a little star, chapters should not sign certain documents, especially relationship agreements, standards, or expectations documents, and until they are reviewed by the university the document review committee. We want to make sure that chapters are not signing anything that waives any of their sovereign rights, that waives any of their rights as a single-sex organization or as a private organization on that campus. So if any chapters might tell you that the institution is considering a new standards document or has created new policies regarding recognition, you need to get in touch with one of the delegates as soon as possible so that we can review that and provide some feedback back to the institution. Another service that we provide is advocacy on Capitol Hill. As I mentioned earlier, NPC, has partnered with NIC and the Fraternity Sorority Political Action Committee to form the Fraternal Government Relations Coalition. Some of the topics that the FGRC discusses and lobbies on behalf of our organizations for each year include Title IX, hazing and mistreatment of students, student housing and safety, and the affordability of college. Probably the piece of legislation that you're most familiar with that we have been lobbying for since 2011 is CHIA, the Collegiate Housing and Infrastructure Act. We are trying to make our fraternity and sorority facilities safer in many ways, and CHIA will hopefully someday help us achieve that. We keep plugging away on that, and hopefully someday soon it will be passed. Other services and programs actually that NPC offers. Something of Value is a values-based approach to risk management education. It is a day-long program that is led and facilitated by representatives of NPC organizations that are represented on campus. There's a follow-up program called Chapter Waves of Change, which is basically a supplement to the Something of Value program that helps chapters make progress on action plans they create during the Something of Value program. It's an additional accountability measure and increases the collaboration that the undergrads have with their NPC delegates and other representatives to help make positive change happen. NPC also conducts consulting team visits, and these are for a fee. These are visits from NPC representatives to a particular campus Panhellenic to assess various Panhellenic needs, so including recruitment processes, officer duties, marketing plans, how to implement or revisions to the implementation of the release figure method, and just sort of overall Panhellenic operations. Panhellenics can request a consulting team visit, and I believe area advisors can also recommend a consulting team visit, but again, there is a fee associated with it. NPC also partners with various organizations within the higher education landscape, including Campus Speak. Campus Speak provides a program called Recruitment Bootcamp, and many campuses sign on to do this program to train undergraduates about effective ways to communicate with potential members and to talk about the obligations and requirements of membership, and to just be strong recruiters overall for chapter growth. NPC also partners with NIC, NALFO, NMGC, NAPA, AFA, and NPHC, sort of the alphabet soup of the fraternity and sorority industry, on a program called the Fraternity and Sorority Coalition Project. This is also a for-fee service that reviews the overall health of fraternity and sorority communities across the country. NPC was a founding member of the coalition in 2007, and it continues to be one of the strongest supporters of the program today. NPC also participates in quite a number of national and regional conferences, including Panhellenics Academy, which is new this last year, partnering with the NIC, their IFC Academy, to provide a weekend of very intensive hands-on training for Panhellenic officers. They also do programming at AFA, which is the Association of Fraternity and Sorority Advisors annual meeting. AFLV Central and West, that's the Association of Fraternal Leadership and Values. SEPC, which is the Southeastern Panhellenic Conference, and NGLA, which is the Northeast Greek Leadership Association. So they do programming and various events at those conferences specifically related to college Panhellenics. All right, so that's sort of we're going to transition out of talking about some of the services and programs to talk a little bit more specifically about Panhellenic, both terminology, as you can see here, as well as some policies and procedures. So in terms of NPC terminology that you will hear, that you might read, or that you'll see during your campus visits, College Panhellenic Association is often abbreviated as CPH. Campus professional is often called FSA, or you'll see maybe someone will even call themselves the FSA. That's Fraternity Sorority Advisor. Some folks do still go by Greek Advisor, but current nomenclature is Fraternity Sorority Advisor. The Manual of Information, this is our go-to resource in NPC land. We are currently operating under the 20th edition, which was just edited and revised this year. It is updated annually and listed on the Kappa website under Chapter Delegate Resources. So if you have an older copy of the manual, or the green book as we call it, I encourage you to download a current copy so that you and your students can be as current as possible. Unanimous agreements, or UAs, are those policies that all 26 member groups have agreed to uphold, and I'll talk a little bit more about the UAs in a few minutes. UAs are different from policies, which are different from best practices, and I'll talk about each of those. So just like Kappa has bylaws, we have policies, we have standing rules. Each of them is different and has a different function. So Panhellenic is the same way. The best practices are sort of preferred methods for operation for a Panhellenic, and are suggested or encouraged for a Panhellenic to follow. All other terminology, recruitment styles. Again, you might encounter this depending on the campuses that you might go to. There are structured recruitments and there are partially structured recruitments. There are also minimally structured recruitments. This all basically depends on sometimes the size of a sorority community, as well as the number of women that are going through recruitment, the number of parties that they host, or the number of rounds that they have during recruitment. It basically, between structured and partially structured and minimally structured, there's greater flexibility in the overall schedule when a campus operates under partially or minimally structured, as the names denote. Again, the release figure method was actually developed by an NPC representative to help aid the membership recruitment process by better utilizing priority rankings and past averages to determine the optimal number of potential new members each chapter should recruit in order to achieve parity or as close to parity as possible, as well as to allow maximum placement of potential new members in chapters. So it's a complex sort of mathematical and statistical method that's used by folks much more well-versed than I am to help determine how many women a chapter should bring back for each round. Total, which is currently has an auto reset policy, which I'll describe in just a second. Total is different from quota. Total is the largest allowable chapter membership on a particular campus. Quota, on the other hand, applies to the new member class through the recruitment process. We try to achieve parity through quota. Quota is the same for each chapter during the formal recruitment process. Total is to be reviewed annually by a Panhellenic immediately following the primary recruitment period. So again, total is the maximum number of women that a chapter can have on a campus, and quota refers to the maximum number of women a chapter can take during formal recruitment. The MRABA, or Membership Recruitment Acceptance Binding Agreement. This is signed by a potential new member at the completion of formal recruitment if she chooses to receive a bid from a sorority. This binds her to her selections through formal recruitment and basically states that she's willing to accept a bid from any organization she lists on that binding agreement. We also have quota additions and snap bids and continuous open bidding. Quota additions are women that are added to a new member class of a particular chapter's bid list in addition to filling quota. This is not an automatic, but if a chapter reaches quota, there is the opportunity, depending on the number of women who are unmatched, as well as what their preferences are, that additional women could be added to a chapter's bid list. Again, this is not automatic and doesn't happen on every campus. Snap bids are bids that are given following the completion of bid matching, but before bids are actually physically distributed. Snap bids are only available to be given out by those groups that do not match quota in order to add to their group, to their new member class in order to reach quota. So again, they are, again, the name suggests, snap bids. They're quick bids that are handed out before the formal bids are given in order for a chapter to reach quota through the process. Continuous open bidding is an informal membership recruitment period that the focus is to get a group to quota and or to total. Bids can be distributed any time during the school year outside of the primary recruitment period or once bids are distributed after the final recruitment period. So again, if a chapter goes through formal recruitment, still has spots to fill to get to total, they can participate in continuous open bidding in order to get up to that point. Some campuses just call this informal recruitment, some call it COB, but ultimately it's an open bidding process to get to total. If any of you have questions about this, just feel free to type them in and I will do my best to answer. Before I dive into the policy, Emily, are there any questions so far?
There are no questions so far.
All right. Well, let's keep going then. So starting to get into some of the policies of the NPC. The first that I want to share with you, as you can see on your screen here, is what we call the jurisdiction of Panhellenic associations. This basically says, as you can see in bold, that regardless of their membership class, whether a chapter is active, associate, or provisional within a Panhellenic association, they must be women's only organizations. Panhellenic members have to respect and obey the letter and spirit of all of our NPC unanimous agreements. So regardless of what type of organization or what type of classification they have within Panhellenic, Panhellenic organizations can only be women's only and must obey all of the unanimous agreements, and all of the governing documents for that association must also conform to the unanimous agreements. The purpose of the College Panhellenic Council. Again, the College Panhellenic Association or College Panhellenic Council is the undergraduate collaborative body that represents the NPC organizations. Collaboration truly is the spirit of Panhellenic. The collaboration of different NPC organizations on campus involves planning and executing various activities and events, whether that's recruitment or academic achievement programs, service programs, Greek Week type programs, and so on. truly trying to embody that Panhellenic spirit that is also important on college campuses. Chapter delegates, so delegates or college Panhellenic delegates from each organization, they are the only voting members or the only individuals that vote in the College Panhellenic Council. Chapter delegates should meet weekly with the Panhellenic executive officers to discuss important business. That information should then be relayed back to the member groups or the chapters to keep information flowing between Panhellenic and the chapters. I'll talk a little bit later about your meeting with College Panhellenic delegates and chapter officers that serve on College Panhellenic in terms of best practices and sort of tips for your communication with them during your campus visits. The Panhellenic Executive Officers or the Panhellenic Executive Council. This group establishes bylaws, the Code of Ethics, membership recruitment regulations, and truly exists for the purpose of promoting Panhellenic ideals on campus. Member groups still maintain their rights to individually govern and function. The Panhellenic Council does not infringe on independent or sovereign rights of the organizations, and again, the council serves at the will and the vote of the chapter delegates, of the voting members. All councils must follow the unanimous agreements. They also must follow NPC policies, and they are encouraged to implement best practices. Again, best practices are not mandates. They are simply encouraged sort of tips and good opportunities for the council to follow up on. Panhellenic officers usually follow a rotation or election process, or sometimes a combination of the two. Usually the combination method is more common on larger campuses with more than the number of officers represented by the organizations on campus. So smaller campuses will generally just do a rotation. Some will just do flat-out election or appointment of all positions, but again, sometimes larger campuses do a combination election rotation. NPC does not govern or maintain the standards of a college Panhellenic. The college Panhellenic functions individually at its host campus. NPC does provide resources, guidance, and assistance to Panhellenics at any time, again, through the area advisor role, through the delegate role, through staff, and so on. All right, our third question, before we really dive into the nitty-gritty of some of our policies. How familiar are you with the Manual of Information? Do you just know that it's the green book? Maybe you still have it in the old green binder. Maybe you know the major policies but don't know many of the details. Are you generally familiar with most of the manual, or do you carry it with you every place you go?
All right, votes are rolling in. It looks like our winner is the 60% of our participants know the major policies but haven't read the details. And then the next highest score was generally familiar with most of the manual. Nobody's carrying it with them wherever they go, though.
Oh, come on. I'm not surprised. That's totally fine. And I would say that that if you're familiar with the major policies, you are already on the right track. If you're generally familiar with most of the manual, again, you're doing great. So I'm going to highlight some of the sort of key or most significant policies and unanimous agreements here so that you are more familiar. But again, I do encourage you to download a copy of the current manual and at the very least skim it so that you're familiar with some of those resources and policies that students should know about. All right, so again, unanimous agreements. Since 1902, member groups have unanimously agreed to pursue certain procedures and ethics that lead to orderly and equitable conduct. All 26 of our member groups have voted that every member of their organization, both undergraduate and alumna, will abide by these unanimous agreements. They are signed by the international presidents and must be followed by each member organization. Many of these policies have been encouraged or have been in effect for quite a number of years. So they are time-tested and proven. And again, the expectation or the requirement is that all members uphold these policies. So, some unanimous agreements that primarily impact college Panhellenics. So even though you won't be directly working with the College Panhellenic Council, it's important that you're aware of these and how our chapters affiliate and are linked to these unanimous agreements. The first we've already covered, the jurisdiction of the College Panhellenic. Again, this laid out that the Panhellenic is comprised of women's-only organizations. The third unanimous agreement is called the Panhellenic Compact, and this actually spells out the process by which campuses should conduct recruitment, as well as eligibility requirements for women who are participating in recruitment. So most of the compact is focused on recruitment as well as eligibility to participate in and join a chapter through formal recruitment. The Standards of Ethical Conduct is the fourth unanimous agreement, and this focuses on member behavior. This is where Panhellenic spirit comes into play, where the collaborative nature of Panhellenic is at its strongest when we are, and our undergraduates as well as alumni are upholding that expectation and cooperating and collaborating positively. The fifth unanimous agreement is on extension. This is the growth of Panhellenic communities through the addition of one or more chapters within any particular time frame. That might be one or more a semester, or again, some campuses might stack, which means that they have agreements with several organizations over the course of sometimes several years. And those organizations come to campus at the request and the vote of the campus, the College Panhellenic. College Panhellenic Agreement establishes or discusses the establishment of college Panhellenics on campuses where there are two or more NPC groups. It also sets some policies regarding recruitment, but for the most part, this focuses on where and when Panhellenics themselves should be established. The Judicial Procedures Unanimous Agreement is just as it sounds. It lays out the process by which college Panhellenics enforce their policies and recruitment rules, and so on. It's the process by which they hold member groups accountable throughout the course of a year. The agreement on questionnaires is also very important for you to be aware of. This refers back to some of the documentation that the University Document Review Committee needs to review. So if and when any chapter within Kappa is asked to sign a document or to, again, waive any particular rights, sometimes that's even if there's a researcher who wants to conduct some research on the community or a particular chapter at the institution. Those documents must be reviewed before they are signed or before the members participate in any type of research or new or revised process. And then finally, the 10th unanimous agreement protects the rights of NPC members to remain women's-only organizations. Again, this refers back to the legislation that we started fighting for in the 1970s, but it also goes as far as to denounce the participation of women in men's auxiliary groups. So this includes little sister groups and so on. And most recently, just within the last few years, they have added a statement denouncing the participation of women in men's recruitment processes. Men can manage their own recruitment process. We have ours and they have theirs, and they should be able to recruit without women participating. So it's important that as single-sex organizations that we not be perceived as supporting recruitment of fraternities or in any way that could compromise our own membership. So those are a few of the sort of more significant or those unanimous agreements that you should be familiar with. All right, so the policies, again, unanimous agreements are different from policies, and policies are different than best practices. Policies are standards and procedures that are created by an NPC vote, usually to address recurrent problems or operating issues that Panhellenics often face. Again, there's an expectation that these be followed because they have been discussed and reflect the knowledge and experience of each of our member organizations. So they have been voted on, but they are not mandates, but the expectation is that they are followed. So some examples of policy. Again, the auto reset of total. This is where total needs to be reviewed and revised and potentially changed immediately following each formal recruitment period. Another policy that some of you might be familiar with is no frills recruitment. We have been working on this for several years now to minimize the the fanciness of formal recruitment, or to minimize the distractions and sort of the extraneous additions to the formal recruitment process that can detract from the simplicity of getting to know one another, having meaningful conversations, and encouraging women to join values-based organizations. Another policy to note is the disassociation of members during recruitment. Most often this relates to or refers to recruitment counselors or recruitment guides during recruitment, or those members that might serve on the College Panhellenic Council as officers. The disaffiliation or disassociation should last no longer than 30 days prior to the start of the primary recruitment period. We're still working with campuses to get down to that 30 days in some cases. You should also know that we have started a pilot process at a few different institutions, UNC Charlotte and UCLA among them, to actually allow counselors to remain affiliated and to share their affiliation. This cuts back on some of the stress of formal recruitment, both on the part of the counselors as well as on the part of the potential members. We are actually seeing significant increases in retention during formal recruitment and overall satisfaction of women participating in the process. So we will see how that pilot continues to play out over the course of the next year or so. Other policies relate to alcohol accountability, holding events with recognized fraternities, so discouraging participation in various events and activities with organizations or fraternities that are not currently recognized by the institution or by their organization for various reasons. We also discourage the peer monitoring of social events. So we discourage Kappas or other members from monitoring other NPC groups or fraternities' social events. That is very important. It's a significant liability issue, and as we know in Kappa, Kappas should have hired security at and chaperones at our social events. So those are a few notes, policies to share with you. Best practices, on the other hand, are procedures that are formulated in order to help local Panhellenics and their chapters achieve success. These are not required but strongly recommended. Examples of some best practices include, for example, Advisor Appreciation Month in April, encouraging college Panhellenics to connect with faculty and staff on campus to show appreciation. It also includes International Badge Day, or encouraging chapters to wear badges during recruitment. Also includes recommendations for academic programming, for educational programming surrounding or discussing alcohol or hazing or drug abuse, recruitment programming on extension and growth, and so on. So again, best practices, sort of tips and tricks for Panhellenics to be the most successful that they can be. So, when you visit with your campuses, with your Kappa chapters, each visit should ideally include a Panhellenic focus. I know you have a lot of other things to cover when you visit with your chapters, but there should be a Panhellenic focus at each meeting. You should be involved in helping to train the Panhellenic delegate. This should include when to contact the NPC resource or delegate, which I will talk about in just a few minutes. Should include a cursory knowledge, or at least knowing how to use the Manual of Information. Should understand sort of the basics of the unanimous agreements, why they exist, and a little bit about each one. Your visit should also include training the chapter president, again, when to contact the delegate, how to use the Manual of Information and unanimous agreements, and so on. When you meet with the FSA, it's important to build that relationship, to express how you can provide support to him or her, as well as when support is needed for Kappa or from Kappa in various campus initiatives. And then finally, meeting with chapter advisors, when to contact the NPC delegate, again, knowledge of unanimous agreements, as well as helping them understand why it's so important for NPC and the College Panhellenic and our individual chapters to collaborate and to promote positive Panhellenic spirit. A little bit more depth here on your meeting with chapter presidents and the College Panhellenic. So when you're meeting with chapter presidents, important to focus on their communication with Panhellenic officers. It should be frequent and it should be open. The chapter president should also have frequent communication with the FSA. However, it's important to be aware of what should be shared and what should not be shared. We can share Kappa's bylaws, which actually should always be on file with the in the FSA's office. They shouldn't really be asking for new copies unless there have been revisions, which again we should automatically be sharing with them. But we do not share our standing rules, our policies, meeting minutes, or our budgets. Chapter level documentation, so chapter bylaws, judicial policies and procedures, meeting minutes, and so on, those should also not be shared. The institution cannot require us as private organizations to add or change our documents. So if a college or university is requesting that we add a particular clause in order to be recognized, again, that needs to be reviewed by the NPC delegate. Again, the chapter presidents should be working with their chapter delegates on major projects or initiatives that are going on within Panhellenic. Certain questions that you should ask the chapter president. How are they communicating with the Panhellenic officers, with their Greek advisor, and with chapter advisors? Are they aware of current events and changes in the Panhellenic community? Are they aware of certain initiatives or votes that are taking place? What is the role of the chapter president in any roundtables that the council might offer? Ideally, a council would offer roundtable discussions, perhaps on a monthly basis for various positions in Panhellenic chapters. And then finally, asking the president if they vote in Panhellenic matters. Again, the delegate should be the sole vote in Panhellenic matters within the association. So those are just some sort of examples of questions that you might have with your chapter presidents. Talking with your chapter delegates, talking with them about their Panhellenic meetings, asking them how frequently the Panhellenic meets. Is it, what type of agenda do they have? Is it a structured agenda or is it loose? Is it more than just sort of sharing announcements? Is their business being discussed on a regular basis? And are they allowing time for discussion? Votes that are taken among and between delegates the delegates should have ideally 2 weeks to discuss that with their chapter. So if you're hearing that, a delegate has just been given an item to vote on for, tomorrow's meeting, the delegate, the NPC delegate for that organization needs to get involved, and we need to reach out to the Panhellenic and slow down that process. Again, they need to be aware that they are the voting representative, that they are the voice of the chapter in the council's business. They should be receiving frequent communication from the council, and they should be sharing that communication with the chapter. That includes minutes, sharing news of the chapter at Panhellenic meetings, and use of using their NPC Kappa resource as often as possible for guidance, for advice, for questions and that sort of thing. So again, asking them about what their communication looks like with the officers of the council, with their chapter, with their Greek advisor, creating a healthy balance between Panhellenic and representing their own chapter. So sort of maintaining that neutrality when it's important, but also still representing and being the voice of their organization. Do they understand how to sort of play nice in the sandbox? That's another sort of way to say, are we being positive Panhellenic partners and supporting other organizations? Again, are we attending weekly or whatever the regular meetings are? Do we have a good attendance record? Are we aware, again, of current events or changes in the Panhellenic community, and again, who attends meetings? Now, some campuses will invite presidents or other officers of the chapters to attend meetings, and that's fine, but again, the delegates have the vote. All right, meeting with women in the Kappa chapter that might hold officer positions in Panhellenic. So this might be, scholarship or recruitment, treasurer, so on. So making sure they understand the role of the Panhellenic on campus. I'm sorry. Making sure they understand the importance of the delegate to lead the Panhellenic, again, having the vote in Panhellenic, to be involved and eligible and to represent the chapter vote. They should still be represented as highly and with as much class as they can. They need to be aware of the manual information. Again, they need to be aware of unanimous agreements, policies, and best practices, and so on. the chapter officers that are on Panhellenic obviously need to have a strong attendance record at the Panhellenic meetings, need to be doing their job, whatever that responsibility might be. They need to be attending Panhellenic events representing Kappa, and as well as doing whatever might be asked of them through their leadership position. And then finally, they need to be supporting and encouraging at all times collaboration and not competition. There is healthy competition, and that's fine. That's academics, that's through service, encouraging chapters to do more hands-on service, not just philanthropy or fundraising. So officers and delegates need to be the ones really championing and cheerleading collaboration. Even during recruitment, when times get tough and competition rears its ugly head, we need to be relying on our Panhellenic representatives to be encouraging collaboration and positive Panhellenic spirit. All right, other chapter members who might be represented on the council, asking them, again, what's going on in Panhellenic? Have there been any changes lately or any votes, any infractions that have been filed against Kappa? Does this person feel comfortable in her role? Maybe she's serving on a committee within the council. Is she comfortable with the responsibilities that have been given to her? Is she familiar with the various NPC resources? Again, does she know that Kappa has a liaison to NPC that she can reach out to? Does she know that she can go to her FSA with questions or concerns, or to her NPC delegate? And then how is she working with the rest of the Panhellenic executive board as well as the FSA? She doesn't need to have a leadership position to be a leader for Kappa or for Panhellenic. And again, maintaining strong relationships with the council and with the FSA is really important. Finally, in meeting with your chapter advisors, talking about the College Panhellenic, chapter advisors should also be kept in the loop about business and changes within the Panhellenic, and they should also be in communication with the FSA. The FSA should be ideally hosting roundtable meetings, just like the undergraduates should be, to encourage communication and collaboration among chapter advisors to discuss important business and again votes that are taking place within Panhellenic. So questions that you might want to ask the FSA if and when you meet with him or her. Again, asking about their work with the area advisors. What is his or her relationship with the NPC area advisor that's assigned to them? Is it collaborative? Do they have frequent communication? Is that person seen as a resource? If the answers all around are no, reach out to Patty or reach out to one of us, one of the other delegates, and we can communicate with that campus or with that area advisor to make sure that the relationship is positive and productive. The chapter advisor also needs to be supportive of the unanimous agreements of the policies and best practices, and they also obviously need to have the current copies of the resources. Again, the current edition of the Manual of Information, and again the policies and best practices. So if you find that the advisors are operating with outdated information, please help them get current information, or again reach out to one of us, and we're more than happy to send that to them. Again, working with fraternity and sorority advisors, they should be knowledgeable about what's going on in Panhellenic. So asking them about, again, current business, the status of the bylaws, have they been revised recently? Where is extension? Is extension on the radar for the Panhellenic community? What are some of the trends in terms of membership or programming or academics? And I think one of the most important questions you can ask is how is Kappa's image on campus? What are some things that we might need to improve upon, things that we could do better, or ways that we excel that we could support the rest of the Panhellenic community? So what are some of the sort of general strengths and challenges of the community, as well as how does Kappa fit in with all of that? A couple sort of fraternity policies here. I know we're running right up on 10 o'clock. We just have a few slides left. Again, if you have any questions, please pose those to Emily, and we can come to those in just a few minutes. So our policy number 10 regards public relations and specifically requests for information. So again, going back to any request that a chapter or a delegate might get to to provide information for an annual report, to participate in some sort of a questionnaire or a survey. If there are relationship statements that are being developed or revised, again, those have to be approved by the fraternity president or by one of the NPC delegates before any sort of response or answer can be provided. So again, if you walk away learning one thing, that is certainly an important thing to know. Also, again, all members of Kappa will abide by, and again, that's collegiate as well as alumni or alumni, will abide by the unanimous agreements and all of the policies of the National Panhellenic Conference. Just a quick rundown of who's who. I've thrown out a few names over the course of this webinar, but here's a better sort of visual breakdown. So again, Kappa's Panhellenic delegate or primary delegate is Patty Gazelle. She also serves as the NPC resource to the chapters, Kappa chapters in Region 1. NPC resource is basically a Kappa delegate's go-to person within her organization for NPC matters. So within a particular region, if someone in Region 1, if a delegate in Region 1 had a particular question, she would go to Patty, as opposed to chapter delegates in other regions, they would go to, again, their corresponding NPC resource. Robin Brock serves as the first alternate delegate, Anna Edwards is the second alternate delegate, and I serve as the third alternate delegate. So again, you can see the breakdown there of regions. I believe all of that is also clearly spelled out in the fraternity yellow pages, but if you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to Patty and she can guide you to the right person depending on which chapter you might be working with. So one sort of last poll question. You would contact Kappa's NPC delegate to discuss which of the following: extension, implementing community standards, changes to recognition policies or awards, housing and community-wide sanctions, or all of the above?
Our votes are rolling in. Probably a few more people. All right, it looks like 100% of our attendees tonight responded all of the above. So looking pretty good.
Awesome. You all get the gold star. If I had gold star stickers I could hand out to you, you would all get one. So yes, we are your go-to resource for all of those issues. Whether it's extension, again, extension is a unique experience in Panhellenic land. If you have not ever worked with a chapter who is going through extension or a campus that is going through extension, it is quite the process. An organization or an individual woman on a campus cannot initiate extension on their own. Extension has to be initiated through the process of an exploratory committee within a college Panhellenic council. They analyze a variety of statistics and other sort of data trends on campus to determine whether or not the community, the Panhellenic community, is ready for the addition of a new chapter. If the vote is taken to open for extension, then the NPC extension chairman or extension committee chairman then takes over to contact other NPC groups to coordinate presentations. And then after those presentations take place, then the Panhellenic votes on which organizations to bring to campus. So again, it's quite the process, but if you ever have questions about extension, again, feel free to reach out to Patty. We also review, again, university standards and other recognition documents. We review housing agreements or changes to housing structures or facilities on campus, or expectations or policies regarding housing. We also review university sanctions or any types of policies that impact the entire community. You might hear through the media now and then about Greek communities that are being closed, or communities that are being forced to or social activity suspensions, or doing away with pledging or recruitment for a particular period of time. So we review those issues and communicate with the campus to gain clarity and to advocate on behalf of our organizations. Again, we also review relationship statements, which describe the relationship of a chapter to the particular campus, as well as awards, and other documentation before they are signed. Again, these things should not be signed, should not be participated in without the review of one of the NPC's delegates. So again, when to contact delegates, any changes to recruitment formats, times, schedules, and so on, whenever there is an infraction filed against a Kappa chapter, or when Kappa wants to file against another chapter. Before it's filed, we strongly recommend that chapters reach out to their NPC resource or a delegate for more information about the process. Whenever there are changes to Panhellenic bylaws, standing rules, social policies, etc., again, and the delegates like to be able to weigh in on that to make sure that they don't violate the sovereign rights of the organizations and to make sure that they follow the unanimous agreements. And also, whenever a campus is discussing forming a joint judicial board, so this is a judicial board that might be comprised of both fraternities and sororities, whether that's NIC groups, NPHC or NALFO, or other fraternities and sororities. These are strongly discouraged, both in Kappa land as well as NPC. There are concerns regarding the maintenance of our single gender status as well as unanimous agreements. We should be advocating and enforcing our policies and should not have men enforcing ours, and we should not be enforcing theirs at sort of the very basic level. A few last resources here. Obviously, you can turn to the Kappa Fraternity Yellow pages for contact information. Again, the current edition of the Manual of Information is on the Kappa website. Chapter presidents, membership chairman, chapter delegates all need to be familiar with this resource. Again, I encourage you to check out the NPC website. Encourage Kappa members as well as alumni to check out this website. Again, chapter officers can log in to view resources specific to college Panhellenics, and they should also try to use, whenever possible, the templates that are available for recruitment rules and so on at the Panhellenic level. And again, there are quite a number of free resources that Panhellenics can download to use for education, for programming, for member success, and so on. So, a bit like drinking from a fire hose tonight. If you have questions, certainly feel free to type them in before we sign off here. I would be happy to try to answer as many as I can. You can also contact Patty, and her email address is listed there. She will also be giving a short presentation at ACS in June. So again, if you will be attending that, she can provide more clarity and more background and detail on some of these things than I can within the hour time frame. But Emily, are there any questions so far?
There are no questions currently in our screen.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, we can certainly stay on for a few minutes if anyone does have a question. I certainly appreciate your time tonight. I hope that each of you learned something new. If you identify that you don't carry around the green book, which I still think you should, but even if you don't, hopefully you walk away tonight learning something new about NPC, whether our structure, our policies, or simply how to work more effectively with our Kappa chapters when it comes to their relationship with Panhellenic. So thank you so much for your time tonight. Again, we'll stay on for a few minutes in case you have questions, but enjoy the rest of your evening.
Great. And remember, as we close the webinar screen, a survey will pop up. Please make sure to respond to those evaluation questions and share your thoughts about today's webinar. The feedback really does help shape future training events and the way that we present this curriculum and education to our members. If you have any additional questions or comments whatsoever, please send them to Karen Holmes. Her email address is kholmes@kkg.org, and she coordinates this process. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.